we are constantly co-regulating, and our nervous system is looking for connection. But there's a researcher, I think she's also Diane, a line from her that nothing is as bad for another person than another person's nervous system, and nothing is as amazing
Totally.
and beautiful than another person's
I
nervous
love it.
system.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I say in Aikido, we're basically two nervous systems training with each other.
Yeah.
So the question is, are we regulating each other's nervous systems in the training, or are we activating each other's, or I guess you could say, are we activating it positively,
Yeah.
or negatively, creating contraction or creating opening?
Yeah.
A little bit about Sisu.
Wow. Now I really have to choose which river to follow. I could go into kind of diving into a little bit of the movie Sisu 2.0 that many people have seen, but maybe I'll leave that.
What 2.0? That's the sequel?
It's the second one. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet.
I found the first one a bit more palatable. And
Okay.
Because it describes this phenomena of when we feel that we are at the end of our capacities to endure something. And Sisu denotes this experience when we find what is like a second wind. We find more energy within in a moment of crisis, or it can also be in very much of these micro moments of everyday life when we are going beyond our preconsidered capacity to endure something or stay present for something. And what I've seen from my own past, doing a lot of peace work and work with nonviolence, I work with practice Aikido, my own experiences, and what I see around me is what we need in this world right now, and what truly seems to take the most courage is what would be a road to reconciliation.
Right.
There's nothing easier than to avenge.
Yeah, exactly.
And to use violence, and that's in the heart of Aikido, which is all the time we're seeking how do we transmute conflict into harmony.
Beautiful.
And world of conflict and world of harmony create very two different worlds. So anyway, back to
that's good. So there's a distinction here between, like in the first movie, which it's kind of it's set in the old World War II, black, where the morality is just black and white, and it's very easy for the hero or the protagonist, for us to get on the side of the protagonist as he goes through really beyond what anybody could imagine having to go beyond. And then, but what you're talking about with the second movie, it kind of points to how even the most pure or wholesome or positive cultural attribute or even spiritual power, whatever, can go to the dark side, can be dragged down to just serve the kind of low level needs of the ego in a way.
Yeah, and
that's 2.0. That's what they did with the movie 2.0.
Well, it's just that it continues with the same narrative, and of course it's entertainment. But it's, again, what kind of stories do we want to put into the world? The future is always first an idea, and especially given this time that we're in right now, and looking how hard it is to cultivate this ability to be forbearing with one another, to have the capacity to love, to be patient in our relationships, in the public arena. It takes a lot. For me, it's a lifetime process, as for all of us. So that I kind of, what I try to do with Sisu is, having researched it now for 14 years, always when I speak of Sisu, I do describe the side that it's this hidden capacity of power that's within us. But like with any quality, we need to find a way how to cultivate it to make it constructive. So Sisu can be very destructive. It can be the reason why we actually fail. So there's hurt to oneself, there's hurt to other people, there's hurt to our reasoning. And then Sisu as a constructive quality, which I like to even call gentle power, is one
that was the title of your book, right? And the subtitle of your book.
Yes.
Right. So it's almost like we have a yin and yang. Let's say we have a yin and yang, and there's the let's just say for the sake of argument, there's a hard power of Sisu, which might be appropriate in certain situations.
Yes.
And the other side of the yin of the yang is the soft power of Sisu, and then they contain the dots, the opposite dot. But when you remove the dot, then you get this kind of pathological imbalance in the Sisu, so to speak. Right.
Yeah. Like either end is not good. So yin, going into too much of yin, it dissolves. Nothing gets done. We are soft. We might not have a boundary. That's so often a beautiful thing I get to practice in Aikido, because I tend to have a lot of yin in certain moments, and yet when you enter, you got to fully do it. Otherwise, your partner will feel it, that you are not quite actually giving the energy and there. But then when the yang, the hard energy goes too hard, it's felt as force. And also, when the force gets too hard, it breaks. So through awareness, testing, where is that sweet spot in each given situation, and it's dynamic, it shifts.
Beautiful. So let's go back to what the kind of point that you were making, that at this time in this cultural moment, it's a gentle power that maybe we need to bring a little bit more forward into our facing challenging situations.
Yeah, well, it's complex, because we also need the strength to stand up for principles. We need to have the courage to be very tough at times. But there's the beauty of, when does the power turn into force? There's a very subtle energy sometimes to it. So both are needed. Again, either is not better than the other. But what it looks like is that we have less conversation about the softer side. And there's a line in Tao Te Ching, which is interesting, because we tend to look at these energies or forces or principles as that they are complementary and equal. But in Tao Te Ching, it says that we must know the yang, know the masculine principle, but we must abide to the yin. So even that strength and toughness needs to rest within that yin, so that it doesn't become violent. And how we end up being enduring, and we can do the ultra run of life, is we need to take care of ourselves.
For me, if we just speak about Aikido for a moment, it's a balanced art of the inside and the outside, the amote and the ura, the internal, the external, the internal being the principles, which are universal. If it's not universal, we can't really call it a principle. It's just a kind of a thing. But for example, my center and your center, at the deepest level, it's the same center. Your connection in you and connection in me at the deepest level, it's the same connection. So there's that universality to it, which I think is also something you speak about Sisu as something that's actually a universal thing, but it has a specific Finnish quality as it's expressed through Finnish culture and Finnish historical experience. So there's the universality, the inside is kind of universal. And then there's the structure that kind of holds it in place, the yang, let's say, that is meant to be a container for the principle, but not meant to be the main thing, because then it becomes, I don't know, fascistic or, too controlling or too rigid.
Yes, that's really beautifully put, actually. That's where it is. And also what you said really wisely is that the concept here, or the principle, the expression, the way of life phenomena is universal. So Sisu points to a phenomena that is seen across cultures, everywhere in all humans. We have life force. We have strength and stamina. That's the whole history of humankind, that we have been overcoming, having the courage to wander into new arenas of life, evolve, withstand pressure, do what needs to be done. But it's also a cultural phenomena. So the Finnish culture produced this concept, which is very interesting within the field of psychology, where we have so many concepts that look at inner strength as a form of mental capacity. So we are still very much in the aftermath of, and still within the mechanistical worldview and thinking, where it's easier to explain phenomena that we can somehow seek to measure, and that also is more in the side of logic, reasoning, mind, and we have
material science, basically.
material science. We have elevated that and done it at the expense of the body. And then what Sisu points to is actually beneath the chin. So Sisu comes from the word sisus,
beneath the chin, interesting,
which means the interior, the inside, the intestines. So it gives a counterpart, embodied one.
I had no idea.
Yeah,
I had no idea that that's what the word, the root of the word.
Isn't it awesome?
So before we go to the universal, and I'm sure we're going to keep speaking about the universal, could you draw out a little bit more of the cultural because Finland is it's quite a unique. I mean, it's Scandinavia kind of, but not Russia kind of, but not. There's something unique about Finnish culture. Could you maybe draw out a few things for those of us who haven't experienced it?
Yeah. Finland is an interesting, quirky place. I was born here. Both my parents are. Most of my lineage is Finnish. I did this gene test long time ago, and I think my genetic heritage is 99.9. So there's not much variation there.
Right.
And one thing that's maybe interesting to understand about Finland is that, as you mentioned, alluded to, is that we are sandwiched between Russia and Sweden. So there has been this cultural pressure toward the Finnish language, way of life, ideology, religion, everything from both sides. And
is it integrated, those two, or is it a unique culture in and of itself?
I would say it's a very much unique culture, so that it has unique features even compared to other Nordic countries. That I would say that Sweden, Denmark are much Norway, even linguistically, but also if I would look at it a bit in a way of from the energy point of view, I would say Finland is a bit more yang. There's a more flowingness to the culture, even to the language and the expression verbally. And of course, there are individual differences again, always. So it's not such a blanket thing. But I would say that there is something to this geographical placement and the historical events that have taken place in Finland. The really harsh climate, where the first settlers decided that, okay, here's where we're going to live. And that was hard. So there's been this forging of developing a culture where you constantly witness people overcoming extremely hard things, extremely hard weather. I love that we're now in spring and it's super beautiful, but how dark and long the winter was somehow this year. And there's a beauty to it. We get to incubate. We naturally turn inwards. And then going into this glorious summertime where light is so abundant, there's an opening. So there are contrasts. And I believe living inside those contrasts, it molds something in us because we have to somehow respond to it, to adapt. And Sisu is partially its adaptability. Under pressure, how do I blend with this? If we look at from Aikido. One narrative from the Finnish history that's very well known is, of course, during the Second World War, the Winter War, when Russia, then Soviet Union, they made certain claims on certain land areas in the southern part of Finland, and the Finnish leaders at the time chose to reject those demands, which for the outer world looked like it was a complete suicide because we were up against a mammoth-sized army.
Exactly. Right.
And this is called the miracle of Winter War that Finland endured. And of course, there were some practical things that led to it. We had much more understanding of how to operate in cold climates, better equipment, understanding of the forests, the terrain, and all of those. Certain strategical decisions that were made that actually allowed and led to Finland didn't win, but there was a peace treaty that was made. So, but also what then was spoken a lot about was this phenomena of Sisu that seemed to forge and become this national spirit that allowed those actions to be taken. That there's an energy that guides everything we do, and especially under pressure, that we need to pull and draw out some energy when there seems to be nothing left. And when the Winter War was finally over, 1940, March, the New York Times wrote a large article about Sisu. And the title was Sisu, the word that defines or describes Finland and Finns.
Wow.
Yeah, and they had a reporter come to Finland and try to understand what is this national character. And a lot of that article speaks about to a certain kind of solitude, to a certain kind of stillness and silence in the Finnish character. It mentions a lot about nature, which is a huge part of how we live here. And even I'm looking at a forest from my window, and I'm 15 minutes tram ride from the city center. So most Finns are always within a walking distance of a forest. And then when we look at what a forest is, like we're connected to the most robust example of resilience that is can be within our eyes. And so those stories have molded the Finnish narrative and this underdog expression that because we've been there, we've had to forge something. But then, having said that, it's easy to elevate this and glorify Sisu. There is a side that with this kind of endurance, we've built a welfare state that we're the ninth happiest country on a row in the world. And of course, those statistics can be really I've been part of a team that we actually looked into the Gallup data. So it's not so straightforward. But we've built that, a welfare state, with this kind of doggedness and focus in the aftermath of the Second World War. But there are also a lot of negative sides to Sisu, which are very much present in our society. And that's why what I call for is this really honest, balanced, open discussion about what's harmful Sisu and what's constructive Sisu, and how do we do it in our individual daily lives.
And that's more for your own culture. But when you're that teaching or speaking about Sisu kind of in the world, I assume that you're speaking more about the positive attributes of this capacity, or both.
I speak of both because it's the balance. It's about sometimes to do a thing well, it's enough to know what not to do.
Yeah.
To notice when I start to get tense, for example, and hard. So I simply, when I relax myself, I'm already more close to a more harmonious expression of Sisu. So I tend to keep it a bit 50-50 and maybe a bit more on the positive side because I do want to be building what we want to see. So it really depends on the audience and my state of body
maybe
mind.
this is a good time to speak about the universality of it, because even the most virtuous of qualities can be appropriated, let's say, by the lower intentions of the ego.
Surprisingly easily.
Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, it happened before we even see it happening. But let's speak a bit before we get into the shadow. If we get into the shadow, let's speak about the universality of Sisu. What is it that makes this so inherent? It in a way, looking at it through the lens of the Finnish culture is like looking at through a piece of a hologram. In a way, it has a specifically Finnish taste and quality to it. But we're speaking about a universal truth, in a way, universal quality. So what are some of the qualities that different cultures relate to with Sisu?
I think it's so I've lived abroad for 15 years, and I just returned home 3 years ago to my native land, and so I was kind of in a prime seat of exploring this, and that was part of my PhD, was to try to understand. I was looking at Sisu as a concept and what does it denote, because there was no empirical research on it, even though it's one of the most integral, essential words of our culture. At the same time,
really,
yes,
that's interesting.
There was a white paper written by this professor in the 80s Some books were written about, especially by the Finnish immigrants to the US, and some popular books. But my article was the first empirically reviewed paper on it, and it was the
Oh,
first PhD.
fantastic.
Yeah, but this was the path laid for me, and not to kind of jump back and forth too much to confuse everyone, but how it even started for me was really a serendipitous journey. I was definitely not supposed to, that was not my aim to be someone who researches how do we overcome extreme adversity. But through my own life experiences, when I had to be face to face asking this question of how do I overcome, how do I endure, how do I stay alive, the question that was in my mind many nights was how do humans overcome extreme adversity? How might I survive the trauma that I had gone through, which was violence, domestic violence. And so this life experience took me on a path of really intimately looking at this concept through my own life experience. And then it became a broader path where I was able to look at this phenomena more broadly and notice what's happening around me. When do we resort to violence? How are we able to build peace? What does that require from all of us? And so did the research, combined it with activism, did some quite intense and interesting field work with it by training to run the length of New Zealand, for example, and did this 2,400, 1,500 mile run that also ended up including some cycling across the length of New Zealand, together with this social activism campaign that I founded that I called Sisu, not silence, encouraging us to choose courage over silence, to share in our communities what's happening, especially those things that tend to stay in the shadows, that
What
eat
was the
and
specific
destroy our life
cause?
force.
What was the specific cause that you were advocating?
It was to break the silence around domestic violence, but also to really celebrate the strength of those men, women, people of all kinds of identities who've had to endure it. Because what I
Right.
noticed was when I started my own journey to healing, that there was this silent story and narrative that the shame somehow tends to go to the one who's experienced the silence, the violence,
Right.
and that you are weak, you're somehow permanently damaged. There's something to be ashamed of. And when I started to do this work and work with domestic violence survivors, children, youth, men, women, I noticed the strength that they had, the beauty. And that's also what I wanted to celebrate. So I wanted to create something that would be, it would be easy to join. It would be vibrant. It was a magnificent journey. And I had so many people rooting and part of it, online and even on locally when I was running. There was this Forrest Gump moment of people joining
Really?
for the run, and
Oh,
then
really? That's so cool.
yeah,
Yeah, well,
and
that's New Zealand too. Yeah,
yeah. And we
I
did
can see
15
that.
events along the route. So there were men's circles, women's circles, keynotes, and it was simply to bring the community together to discuss really like what creates compassionate society. So it was to eradicate the silence around domestic violence, to celebrate the strength of overcomers, and to build compassionate cultures. So that was
Can,
my,
can I bring can I bring you
yeah,
back to something you
please
just
do.
said?
Yeah,
It was specifically about the victims or the survivors of domestic violence and how even in those most maybe broken moments that sisu is something that's inherent that somebody can
yeah,
somehow access or learn to access or be shown that it's just there
yeah,
and as a way to empower the recovery process. Did I hear you right?
yeah, beautifully.
Yeah,
Yeah,
can you
and
say more about that? Because that moment, it's such a it seems like such an important for
yeah,
anything, but specifically if anybody's surviving any type of traumatic experience.
and you are so intuitive. Like again, you are touching both sides, or there are many sides, but like you mentioned that it's a strength that's within us, this capacity
Right.
that we can touch upon it. It's Sisu is, it's, I wouldn't say it's ever lost. It's not something that can go anywhere. It can be forgotten. There can be so many narratives that drown it. That we are told things that, you're not good enough, you're not welcome, and we ingest these, and so there's almost like a curtain between it. And then the second part, you said that we can inspire this in one another, and that's through those stories. That's why it's important to share our life journeys as much as we want to, of course, always honoring our own pace, but also stay alert and vigilant to notice when we notice the Sisu in another person. Because what I've also seen is we tend to sometimes not realize how much of this strength we have. Many of us are so used to enduring and using our Sisu all the time, and then we even say, like, I don't have it, and I'm not good enough, and there's this huge burden on many of us. But so I do see Sisu, when I take it out from this very a conceptual thing and a research topic, I see it carrying huge potential to actually to support the goal of Osensei, which was to help reconcile the human family through Aikido. And when we learn to also notice Sisu in one another, we realize how similar we are, and we all must use it. So when we focus on that, we are cultivating this similar ability to bring forth this connectedness, and that's what we need, because then we're really strong, not as isolated.
It's so interesting because in a way, this intestinal fortitude, or Sisu, we can all dig in individually, run across the New Zealand, north to south or whatever, and we can find it. That's one aspect of it, and I hear you talking about that, but I love the other aspect that you're speaking about, how the relational aspect. One of my dear friends and mentors, Diane Hamilton. Do you know who Diane Mushel Hamilton?
No.
A Zen Buddhist teacher and integralist, and I was working with her once, and she was, I had men teachers my whole life. Just that's who I gravitated, father issues. And that's always who I gravitated towards up through my 30s, up through my mid 30s. And then to find balance in myself, that was in not just sports, but in martial arts. And then of course in Aikido. And then to find balance in myself, I started, moving towards like what you were referring to as gentle power. And one of the consequences of that was I also started, connecting with women mentors. And Diane was really good because she was doing something. When I say she was good, she was doing something with me that I had never experienced in a mentor before. She was praising me around certain things. Yeah. And all of my masculine teachers were like, good, but now do better. It was the masculine challenge aspect of development. And at first I was embarrassed, and at the second, and then I started to realize how nourishing it was. And I asked her about it, and she said, when you recognize somebody, it strengthens them. Yeah. And these, especially in the conversation we're just having around recovery, when we recognize the positive aspect of the recovery journey, healing, or even just simply development, that strengthens. And I have 2 young daughters, so that's something I'm practicing with them on a regular basis. But can you say something more about this relational aspect of Sisu? And it's not just an individual intestinal fortitude thing, but maybe there's more in the gentle power side of the equation.
Yeah, this is a very good direction. This conversation is it is even more going now that you're.
I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, this is so much fun, and the relational aspect is incredibly core to Sisu, and we tend to, especially in Finland, because Sisu carries this historical narrative and almost a burden a bit. How we've used to conceptualize and understand it is that it's this lone hero, very masculine quality too, that we forge our way through it. But the relational aspect of Sisu is very important. How I like to describe it is that Sisu, it lives not only in you or in me, but it's actually in the space, in this sphere, in this field.
Wonderful.
Between us. Something is born from how you show up to me and how I show up. And for the longest of time, I struggled to explain this because I felt this through my research, through the phenomenology, because I researched Sisu first through a survey, did the whole usual thing, and then I realized I had more questions than answers, that Sisu points to something that's very visceral, somatic, pre-cognitive, pre-verbal. So I had to go inside it, and therefore, running across New Zealand, I went to China to study Kung Fu. I put myself in a completely different context.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
and what I noticed was this relational aspect to it, and it would felt almost a bit like magical, and that's really not a good way to explain it in science. So, but then when it clicked and I realized what is happening is this is what our nervous systems do. It's our biology, it's our evolution. Even though we're spiritual beings, but we're also bound by these evolutionary boundary conditions, which is that the number one thing our system is hardwired to do, instead of pleasure, instead of beauty, it looks for threat. It looks for how to keep the organism alive. And we can't escape that. We can't change that. We can train our mind to notice what's good, what's beautiful, what relaxes us. But underneath that, there is this, it's called negativity bias, so that we are hardwired to notice what doesn't work. Because what the mind, what the body wants to do is it's constantly seeking, well, this information has more survival value. Because when I notice the saber-toothed tiger, or I notice someone who's about to attack me, or I notice the strange tone in my boss's voice, it allows me to simulate a possible threat, and maybe I can avoid harm, hurt, violence, death, separation, exclusion.
Yeah, we're deeply conditioned. We're like genetically descendants of survivors. Yeah. So it's deep in us.
Everything is born from us and from that in-betweenness. But here's the thing, even between you and I, and we're in different countries, we're not physically in the same space. Our nervous systems are reading each other. And there's this invisible universe between us where our nervous system is constantly scanning what's happening around us. And it's looking for an answer for this one question that we were all born with, and that our body keeps asking from the moment our eyes open in the morning and we go to sleep, which is, am I safe? And when the answer is yes, like, for example, we mentioned, was it Diana? Your teacher?
Diane.
When she verbally describes something that this was well, there's acceptance. It's a communication of safety. You belong. You are good enough. I don't think there's many people here who really, when we go through that journey of healing, then we start to realize we're good enough. But most people don't. I lived most of my life thinking I'm not enough, and still have moments.
We're not getting the external reflection.
Yeah, and it's the external reflection that can help facilitate it, midwife it. But ultimately, when I realized, when I had this moment, this deep realization that, which was only actually about a couple of years ago, I knew cognitively that I am lovely, I am a nice person to spend time with, but there was this wounding that didn't allow me to really, it wasn't landing somatically. But when it happened less than a couple of years ago only, that really made me fearless, and it changed a lot of things when I realized that I am lovely. And that allowed me to also connect in a completely different way with my partner, because it wasn't up to him to constantly verify it. Because there are moments when we need something from another person and they can't give it to us. We can't always be there. And do I then fall apart and I go immediately that I'm rejected, I'm not good enough? Or do I fall back into this knowing that I'm here, I'm safe with me? And that's a lot of strength that comes from that. So what I'm trying to say is this, how our nervous system operates, and we are constantly co-regulating. And our nervous system is looking for connection. But there's a researcher, I think she's also Diane, a line from her that nothing is as bad for another person than another person's nervous system And nothing is as amazing and beautiful than another person's nervous system.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. I love it. Yeah, that's why I say in Aikido, we're basically two nervous systems training with each other. Yeah. So the question is, are we regulating each other's nervous systems in the training, or are we activating each other's, or I guess you could say, are we activating it positively, or negatively, creating contraction or creating opening?
Yeah. And even when the other person, I love that about Aikido, that you have to train with everyone. You switch partners. There might be people whose energy you feel that it's just so easy and you're always at your best. It's such an amazing feeling that with someone I can raise to a level that's beyond where I am. And then with someone it's just really hard. And there are these differences. And yet the point is, like in real life, we're going to meet all kinds of people who have different states of nervous systems, different histories, and we need to work with everyone. So I take it always as not as a challenge, but as an opportunity to simply find, again, Aikido, harmonizing energies. How do I align with this, which is not my favorite thing? How can I find something that is a point of connection? So how can I lean on me in those moments, and when I can be that for someone else?
Well, I would say, even like you were speaking about with your partner, sometimes we need the external affirmation to feel seen or whatever. But ultimately speaking, we need to find that in ourselves, and that's that process of that journey to realize that, God bless us all, because it is a process. Is a process of, in a way, Sisu is a quality that helps us do that. But once we've kind of come to that recognition where we find our own internal strength, then we're not so dependent on external affirmations, number one. But number two, and maybe even more importantly, then we have that gift to share with others. And not in a way where, hey, I'm going to be your affirmer. No, we're just sharing who we are. In a way, when the wound is healed, there's maybe a scar there, but that scar becomes a gift that we can share with others in a way that does not obligate them towards anything, just affirms who they are.
Yeah. And again, so beautifully said that we need Sisu for this journey. And I think that's the most important Sisu we need. And that's why from the beginning, is our Sisu the kind of road to revenge? Or is it the kind of Sisu that's the bravest journey we will ever take, which is road to reconciliation, to uniting the human family? But we need to, it's a paradox. Again, like life is so full of paradoxes, that the journey, we ultimately need to go in our own somatic fibers and take those steps and to find that safety in ourselves. But we can't do it on our own. So the cut off and the wounding, that always, that what separates us from each other has happened in an intimate relationship, whether it's in childhood or youth or adulthood. And that mark is pressed into that emotional body, so to speak. So we can't heal that on our own. We also need the other person for that. So
well, we were wounded in relationship, and in a way, we need a healthy relationship. Healthy, like if in a therapist is a model of a healthy relationship, but in the best scenario, and we need a healthy relationship to heal. But I tell you what I love about this conversation, because if you think of the Finnish, the kind of the archetype of, World War II and the Russian front, and Finland being, strong enough to hold back an empire, it's really impressive. And it took a certain amount of strength and let's say Finnish character. But if we don't take that to what you call the more important journey, which is our own personal healing transformation process, then it's going to be imbalanced, let's say.
Well, here's the thing. So Sisu, as this toughness, this fortitude, that there was no space for emotions, no space for gentleness. Right. Those men and women, they had to rebuild. Yeah. And there was a lot of war trauma that was pressed. It was transferred to next generations as violence, as emotional distance. And we are the generations still of that.
I live in Israel, and I mean, we're just seeing it perpetuated and reenacted nonstop.
Yes. Yeah. What we don't
years.
Transform will always transmit. And that's why the personal work. But so that Sisu allowed us to endure and rebuild and rise after a world war. But here's the thing, that Sisu, if we don't elevate it to its higher octave, where there's also this ability for nurture, care, love, self-respection, that won't prevent us from getting to another world war. So the Sisu that I'm talking of, the Sisu is that will prevent a world war. And the first one was the kind that we help us to endure the aftermath. So that's the transition here that needs to happen.
Actually, it's a balance between power and empowerment, or you could say, I don't know if it's right to say hard power, but the gentle power. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with developing your character in sports and in competition and in martial arts and in running, across the country and all of these things. But for the purpose of, that fortitude that's developed in those things needs to be transformed or needs to be used, you could say, almost in a way that where it's really the most important. I guess for the Finnish pioneer that moved to the original people that moved there, they needed that. And here we are generations later, hundreds of years later, and there's a whole society that's built because of them. Thank God for them. But it needs to be transformed it needs to be applied if we really want to grow individually, collectively, relationally, even spiritually. It needs to be turned into an internal process, which is not about power, but more about empowerment.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It's the trouble is that we don't know what we don't know. And so we didn't even have words for emotions 100 years ago. Emotions weren't a academically sound research topic, not only until still 50, 60 years ago. And now it's in every branch of human research and AI even. That there's this piece building block that was missing. In the Finnish language, emotions, there's a word, how it was considered was that emotions were the devil that eats the guts. That's the word that emotions meant in the Finnish language.
So basically what that means is unprocessed emotions or undealt with emotions are going to eat you from the inside, basically.
Yeah. That it's like Satan. It's a devilish thing. And because we didn't understand, because we were so in that logic, linear thinking, analytical, the mind. Yeah, it's again, harmonizing what I've learned from and Aikido for me is I do a lot of dancing, a lot of different body movements, gone through a huge journey with all kinds of somatic healing modalities. But Aikido for me, and this, we each need to find what works for us. But for me, it's the most useful, beautiful way to develop this inner attunement to noticing the shift and how I respond to those different, when I contract, when I open. And I get to do that again and again with my partner, and it's so nuanced. And the thing with Aikido for me is that we can look at it as a technique and a practice. It's the Aikido that is visible to the eye. Very good practice in itself. But what happens underneath, if we're able to kind of explain in a bit what's actually taking place there, for example, before any connection is made, before the movement or the hands touch, the motion has already started, which is what one Aikido teacher told me, that it's already what you bring into the situation. It's right. Like this, the motion starts long before your hands touch with someone. And that's the work that we can do with ourselves, is that how do I cultivate balance in me? Because that's what I bring to my work, to my family, to this conversation with you, for example, wherever we are. And from that, an interaction is born. From that, a world is born. And to a force or a power, there's always a counter force. So contraction will create more contraction. Harmony and openness will diffuse it. It can resolve conflict. And that's the opportunity we all have here.
Well, it's interesting because, for me, what Aikido brings to the world, even though it's not such a popular martial art these days, it was, it had its phase. Every martial arts goes through a phase. But it's still unique among martial arts, and I would even say exceptional among martial arts, in that it's a positive sum martial art. That the philosophy, the practice, and the intention is to resolve conflict in a positive way, rather than in a zero-sum way, which is, there's always one winner and always one loser. Every martial art is like that. And dance, you could say you get to that same kind of resolution quality, but it doesn't have the conflict.
Yes.
Even the best, dance, it does. So Aikido brings the conflict right away. And to get in a place where, when all the bells and whistles, in the midst of a conflict, when all the bells and whistles, all of our survival instincts, the saber-toothed tiger running away from caveman instincts in me wants to fight, flight, and freeze. But to say, no, I'm going to center ground, connect, listen, and move with the energy, because the energy of this kind of conflict, this kind of unbearable energy of the conflict, has a direction. That direction is Aikido. That direction is the way towards positive sum resolution. But to stay in that place, it sounds so simple. Everybody goes,
that takes Sisu, but sometimes.
Yeah, you hear about it. See, it's so easy, but it's almost impossible to do. Yeah. So that's where we have to bring in this quality of Sisu, in another name, to stay in that place. And it completely requires strength, but it also completely requires surrender. Yes. It completely requires an intention to stay positive sum. And it also completely requires an openness of listening. I don't know, with no agenda, where this is going to go. And when those can be contained without going into contraction, without going into reaction, I should say, then my experience is, and it's again and again and again, is that the energy of the moment always leads towards its resolution, its positive sum resolution. Yeah. And then we turn around and say, well, that was Aikido. Yes. Rather than me doing a technique here, a technique there. Yeah. And to get there, oh my God, it's like you said, that's Sisu, because it's so difficult to do.
Yeah, it can be. It's what Richard Moon often speaks about, which I love how he describes it, that this phenomena, that it to simplify it, there's a feeling that we all have felt when things are flowing, it's harmonious, it's easy. And so it's this place of, how Richard puts it, that you're loving it. You're surfing. There's a harmoniousness to it. And then at some point, something happens. You go into a place of losing it. It's not harmonious. There's a contraction. And so the opportunity here, and the only thing really that's needed, because we want to simplify. We all have so many, so much stuff on our mind, and new theories and skills and all that. But actually, the only thing what needs to happen is that we notice when we switch from that openness into contraction. And that is how, this is what I would say is called somatic intelligence, body intelligence, somatic intelligence. And that's what gets trained in Aikido. We get to simulate those moments on the dojo. And then that gets, if we realize that we make the connection in our minds, that it's not just a technique, but actually what I'm simulating is real life. Whenever an emotion is stirred, can I notice it? Can I sit with it, breathe with it, even transmute it into a positive one? Like, that's the biggest miracle that ever happened on this planet, is someone noticing and choosing another way.
It's the best, not just somebody noticing, choosing another way, but noticing it and choosing it together in a relationship. For me, that is the top, relational experience that we can have. It's just the sweetest of the sweet. It's the most satisfying of the satisfying, because we're in a place that was total dissatisfaction. Yeah. And then, the conflict, and then, aligning with all of these principles of Aikido, and then the miracle happens, and there's nothing to do, there's nothing to say, there's no, you don't have to, put it in a box and sell it. It's perfect in and as it is.
Yeah. How to dance with an unwilling partner.
There you
Even
go.
that, like Richard says it. Yeah.
There you go. Well, listen, so we're kind of coming to the end of the hour. Actually, we're at the end of the hour. Just one last question, maybe to wrap this up, and for you to, how can Sisu, where do you see Sisu having its greatest gift for culture these days?
Yeah, Sisu, simply to bring it into our dialogues and in our conversations will help us notice and remember that we have the strength. So we tend to forget because the mind, again, wants to focus on what's not working.
That's right.
And we all have a track record of overcoming hard things. And those victories and overcomings will stay with us forever. I will forever remember how it felt like in New Zealand. That's a treasure that I get to keep. I went through it. It's mine. And it gets to also inspire other people, possibly. But having this conversation of the inner strength, what does it look like when it's a constructive quality? Those are conversations I lead here in Helsinki all the time, that we come together as a community to discuss that what kind of Sisu is needed right now on individual and collective level. And simply by opening a conversation of this, there are ideas that are exchanged, there's a little inspiration. I think it's very grassroots at the end, how things change, but it will benefit from a wider field of grassroots. And that's what I hope. As we discussed, staying alert to noticing that Sisu in other people, when it's positive, when it's negative, so that we'll have, like my partner, I love what he's taught me so much is this direct transmission that lets us speak how things are, what we notice, have this courage to just show more skin, be humans, because that's what we are first and foremost. So it can offer a lot to a culture, as you described, and it can offer a lot to an individual person. So having the courage to try out hard things, our nervous system is incredibly robust. Like we are a robust, anti-fragile species. So testing ourselves, not be too squeamish also. And then on the other side, remembering that we're incredibly vulnerable as well. So holding those two extreme ends in one as much as we can.
No, beautiful. That's a great place to finish.
Yeah.
Finish concept of
Sisu.
I was just thinking it's so wonderful. Yeah, I enjoy. I was just thinking it was so wonderful that you have one word that captures so much inside of the culture that you can,
whole rabbit hole.
People can. Well, there you go. But yeah, I really enjoyed this talk, Elisabet. So thank you, and I hope to do it again sometime.
Great. Thank you so much.